I participated during the earthquake, the 94 earthquake, I think it was. And it's federal money, FEMA money. Secret Service came in and they're like, if you commit fraud or rob us, it's a federal crime. You'll go to federal prison. And it was Secret Service agents. They're giving the speech. And then I watched everybody cheat. And they listed the same person like hundreds of times, same driver's license, everything, turned it in to get the money.
Wow. Hello. Welcome to For the Needs podcast, Root Cause. Today, I'm joined by Myan Spaccarelli, one of our founders. My name is Allie and Myan, director of For the Need Foundation. Today, we're going to evaluate where $24 billion of California's funding toward the homelessness issue has gone, as well as a project that has been proposed in Santa Monica, and compare these to a local nonprofit that we work with who is very successful. And if we have time, maybe some more. So let's get into it.
This topic reminds me of that old Robert Palmer song. She's so fine, there's no telling where the money went. Old people know that song.
Comment below if you know that song.
Simply irresistible.
$24 billion was spent in California in the past 5 years, which works out to being $42,000 per person experiencing homelessness per year. And we saw that the statistics show around 42% of those people end up back in homelessness again, or unknown entirely what ends up happening to them.
I don't know why all I keep thinking is I could have bought a lot of race car parts with that money. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy a lot with that money. What they built is like a lot of different facilities. I mean, I've got the breakdown here, like interim housing, they spent $131 million on in the last year.
The thing about it to me is it's just, an evaluation of what the root cause is. I don't think we really go back and ask the right questions at all. To me, they'll be like, okay, how many houses did we build? Or how many hours did we serve? We've seen the nonprofit, the way they get money and they justify their grant applications and stuff.
Some of them, yeah.
A lot of them,
yeah.
That we've seen, when you have to produce your results, it's not outcome driven. It's more of what did you do, and when you do that, people can manipulate it super easily. We did 500 hours of therapy. We did, so much food giving. We had so much educational.
We serve 500,000 people.
Yeah, and it's hard because it is people, not products or widgets or whatever, to put the dollar amount on outcome. So when I was driving dump trucks, I love driving the dump trucks over belly dumps because dump trucks you charged by the hour. So it didn't matter how many loads I did. I could do 2 loads a day in 8 hours and I get paid the same. And the dump truck drivers would be like, okay, we're setting a pace. And the rule was you didn't pass the first truck. Don't pass the truck ahead of you because you'll make him look bad. So if I did 7 loads in a day and the other guy did 5, they'd fire me.
Wow.
Yeah. Because it wasn't based on productivity or outcome. It was just hourly. But the belly dump drivers got paid by the load. So they were running red lights. They were doing whatever they could because every trip they made more money. So who do you think moved more rock?
Yeah, exactly. The belly dump drivers.
Because it was by the outcome, not by the work that you're being put into. And so for me, a lot of this is we can look at all these numbers, but the question is the system, like studying the system. Is the system putting out the result in the way of measuring the system? And at the end of the day, some of the stuff on the outcome is harder to measure. So, and the other thing too is it's longer term. So it's easy to justify hours, or it's easy to justify, we built 1,200 houses, but that's not necessarily the outcome.
What would you say the outcome is for someone experiencing homelessness? What's the positive outcome for them?
The success rate of them being able to, on their own, contribute to their life and maybe even others. So they can support themselves. They put their own house. I mean, it's the same for you guys. I'm sending Nathan to school.
Yeah.
And I told him, like, this isn't a boomerang house. You get thrown out and it's not coming back. So you negotiated coming back. You're like, Dad, I've already lived on my own. I could save some money, get married. I could work at the foundation very cheaply, and you negotiated your way back for a small period of time, which was awesome and reasonable because again, the outcome was you were going to be a launched person.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same for Nathan. If somebody came in, like the kids that we're working with, we know what our expectation. We celebrate when they get a job, when they get an income, when they get a car, when they get a driver's license. And obviously the biggest victory is the ones that have gotten apartments, and it's so cool. They're like, now we need furniture, but that's the greatest feeling of all. And it can be measured, but I don't know. We certainly aren't seeing stuff where they're saying, hey, we'll give you this money if you could prove out this outcome. It's more like, how many backpacks did you give, or how many volunteer hours did you have? And I certainly saw it with Nicole's nonprofit that she was working at, a huge nonprofit, and they'd send 4 people to a preliminary trial. They'd send a psychologist to a preliminary trial to take notes at the trial when nothing's going to be said. It's all like prelim. And I'm like, why do they send 4 people? And she's like, to bill the hours.
Yeah.
Where did the money go? Like, there's no public business that would do that. There's no public business. And I don't know. To me, I don't understand. We call it a nonprofit, and there's a mentality that goes with that I just completely do not relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's why For the Need, we focus very much on outcomes and, make sure that we're producing really great results for the kids we serve so that they can have better lives.
It's interesting to me because I have seen some of my friends that are business minded have done very successful with a company, and they'll get into civic service, but somehow it seems like, and maybe it's because I had a manufacturing background, and maybe they had a service background or something, but it's interesting because there does seem to, once you get in it, like that connection to the result starts to change a little bit. It surprises me. It's not just necessarily a business mindset because you say, oh, like have business people apply themselves to this problem, but I don't know. It just seems like once people get involved, there's good-heartedness, but sometimes a loss of way, maybe. And I'm not trying to say all of them. I mean, we run into some great organizations.
Yeah.
But
well, when you think about the root cause of why someone's experiencing homelessness, it's not always the same. And
that's true.
Yeah, it's not always the same, but what we're seeing, like these government programs, they're providing housing, mental health services, legal aid, wraparound medical services, really trying to give individuals every possible pathway to success that they can, but they're still failing. Like it's only 23% who are succeeding even with all those services.
Yeah.
What do you think is the root cause there?
Yeah. Well, when you always preface when we're talking about outcomes and results based on the different circumstances. And one of the biggest circumstances, as I see it, is mental health. And so the real question to me is what's causing the mental health crisis, and that's where we start to differentiate ourselves and also lose some fans, because to me, you got to start early. You got to start young. A lot of mental health is hereditary. It's based on, they were born that way, or some, other factors.
Well, not as much as you'd think, because I did study psychology in college and took neuroscience classes and things. And what we learned through all the research that's out there is that you can have predispositions to certain disabilities or disorders, such as anxiety or depression. You can have those predispositions when you're born, where you're more likely to have that happen.
Yeah.
Where you have that disorder. However, there's usually a triggering event. And there's usually a perspective that goes along with it that leads to those disorders becoming heightened and becoming like actualized and
Yeah.
presenting in those people.
Yeah, it's funny
So,
because you said not as much as I think, but I agree with you. I don't, because when I was doing the work in LA with the hospital clinic, it was like, what drug are you taking? And I did not find one that came through the clinic that wasn't on some type of serious drug or alcohol. And so maybe there was some whatever.
well, the drug could be that triggering
That,
event.
but
Yeah.
that could be the triggering event. The drug could be the cause, the complete cause. I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation to why they're taking the drugs, because some of them are self-medicated for other psychological problems that they already had potentially. But a lot of it is self-induced. They were fine. They didn't even have a how do you say it?
Disposition.
Predisposition, you know.
Yeah.
But they went down that route. And again, that's why I come back to, like Matthew always says, ROI, the return on investment. If things are more based on return on investment, and it's just such a cold way of talking about it. It's called positive reinforcement for positive behavior. And so you look at root cause, so much of our setup is positive reinforcement for bad behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
how it's set up a lot of the time.
and incentivized. And so even how they track how they pay for nonprofits, you know, it can incite a lot of bad behavior. We've seen it.
Yeah.
And so where did all the money go? It's crazy to watch it go. I knew during COVID, because I participated during the earthquake, the 94 earthquake, I think it was. And it's federal money, FEMA money. Secret Service came in and they're like, if you commit fraud or rob us, it's a federal crime. You'll go to federal prison. And it was Secret Service agents. They're giving the speech to all of us demolition contractors and stuff like that. You know, demolition contractors, unruly, not always the most ethical group of, characters. You don't get into demolitioning stuff like that when you could have been a doctor, but as a field I loved the trash and the recycling and stuff like that. But there's so many ways to commit fraud. So the Secret Service comes in and gives speech. And I remember telling Martha, I'm like, oh, wow, we got to really dot our I's, certified payroll, all this stuff. And then I watched everybody cheat.
Wow.
I watched, the fraud was so rampant. And you had to turn to certified payroll. And I saw somebody else's certified payroll and they listed the same person like hundreds of times, same driver's license, everything, turned it in to get the money. And nobody looked and said, it's the same person 100 times. And there was one company that took so much money. He was cousins to one of the city council guy in LA. They made so much money. They ended up having a float in the Rose Bowl parade. And then all of us that worked for them didn't get paid. We went to court to try to sue to get the money. And they threw us out, said it was emergency. Wow. It was emergency thing. And they wouldn't even hear our case.
Oh my goodness.
And this is federal money. It was so easy. So when COVID came around, I was like, oh, this money is going to go all. And I saw people I know take so much money. Yep. So much money. And it was so easy, because there's not based on outcome. It was like, oh, if you lost this much money, we're going to send you this money. You don't have to show what you're going to use it for and show the ROI.
Interesting.
So root cause is that they need to develop more common sense outcome. If your nonprofit can show a direct result that you're changing lives, you're producing this outcome, here's some money. and for us, it could be even, hey, you guys show it and then we'll reimburse you or we'll pay you, we'll give you more to do more. And that's how life works in general. That's how it works for you. When you guys were younger, I go, you guys do well, I'm right behind you. If you're not doing well, look behind and you'll see nobody, But when you're doing good, I'm right, like you tell me, let's go. But if you're going down the wrong road, it's like, we'll wait for you to come back.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of all the people who are paying they say about a third of Californians are paying over half their income to rent. And so any issue comes their way and they can't make rent all of a sudden. There's thousands, tens of thousands of people that are, living at poverty or below poverty.
It's funny because you're like diving into the way I think, and obviously I'm trying to influence For the Need and what we're communicating to the kids. It's like at the end of the day, I don't think our hurdles that are that hard. Been around the world. Your mom is from Peru. We've seen how those people live, in desperate poverty with like no opportunity to. And so I don't have much sympathy. You mentioned it before at an earlier thing. If I was in the situation and had no money, I would scrape up enough. I remember we were in Hawaii on a school trip thing, and I had no money, and I found out that you could return the carts for a quarter, and I made like $40 in no time because I needed to pay for the flyaway to get home once we got back, and I was a dumb kid and I spent all my money, and so. So
a school trip to Hawaii, that's interesting.
It was like the senior trip, and I'd saved my money, and I went, so it wasn't like a school trip, but it was like kids from school or whatever, and we were so dumb, we just spent all our money and crashed the scooter and had to pay for that and like other fun stuff.
Oh, wow.
But you were responsible for your own, and a lot of kids. I remember my friends calling their parents. And I'm like, I can't call my parents. My dad would call me an idiot. I'm like, I'm going to find another way. And so, $600, honestly, I enjoy when we've had the financial crisis. We had a recession, the Great Recession, what do they call it? Recession, but it was really
the housing
similar.
Crisis?
Yeah, the housing crisis. I think for a lot of people that was a depression, but a lot of us moved in with each other. Like we stacked them 9 high. And honestly, the sense of community was so much greater. And we see situations where I've taken kids home from our program if they've got in apartments and there's 8 of them in a 1-bedroom, or 6 of them in a studio. And it's not comfortable, but they're surviving. And you can scrape up enough money to potentially move to another state where it might be more affordable. But I remember during the recession, they said it's like 10% unemployment. And I'm like, 10%? I only need to beat out 10% of the people to get a job? Like,
10% to most people is pretty bad.
That sounds, it's incredibly bad to most people. But I was like, I'm like, I can do something. If I got to beat out 10%,
Well, I like what you're saying, and it goes back to like a lot of the mental health issues too. Your perspective is huge on how you interpret your situations that come across. Like there could be 2 different people that go through the exact same like so-called like potentially triggering event, and one could come out seeing the the bright side and finding that community through survival, through crammed living, and then someone else could come through blaming their circumstances and having a really negative perspective. And that will determine how they see their future and how people go about creating that change to make sure that they can afford their living longer term. Like someone who believes they have that agency, all the studies show, if you believe you have the agency, if you believe you can do it, you probably will. But if you believe that you can't, you probably won't.
Yeah. That's Henry Ford's saying or whatever. If you believe you can, you will. And if you believe you can't, you will.
It's like if you believe you can, you're right. If you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I always think about that.
Yeah. And a lot of this, to a lot of people, sounds cold-hearted. But I remember at Alcoholics Anonymous, that one of their things with Al-Anon, they tell people is that do not provide the soft landing. And it's so hard because the hard landing might be death. An alcoholic might drink themselves to death. But if you provide the cushion for them to land on, they never have that life-changing moment, change that perspective that you're talking about. And it's so funny. I remember a guy at Alcoholics Anonymous who's telling a story, and he's like, I was on my deathbed. They had to pump my stomach. The doctor told me I wasn't going to live. And I prayed, God, please help me. And I'll dedicate my life. And he lived. And then he went out and celebrated with drinking more. Sometimes they have to hit the floor twice.
Yeah.
But if you put the pillow under there to have that life-changing thing, and I think the differentiation is mental health. It's like there are people, we know a particular homeless person that stays with us from time to time that was in a bad car accident and had a brain injury, and was talking to his dad, and his dad's like, oh, you got to help this kid. You got to, he used to be so good and he could do all this stuff. And can you talk to him? And I'm like, no, this is a brain injury. This is not that situation where any perspective, because he's had the perspective changes. When the perspective changes so many times and you're like, they're not picking up on it, there's an injury. So we're not talking about that. And I would even say on some of the outcomes where some of the missions say they have 80% outcome, I would all but bet that they're filtering out mental health, because you have a very low percent chance. But there are other ones like anxiety and other things like that to certain levels that are very overcomable. Like I remember my buddy Jim Starman, he used to drink all day. I was the only one who could understand him because he drank so much. He's just there, but he's like, man, you're born with a set of cards, and you got to play your hand, and so your hand has to be incredibly bad, in my feeling. Like, and what I like is from
your hand has to be incredibly bad for what?
For you to not be able to overcome the hand you're dealt with. Like, and some people are dealt with that hand. But, from my perspective, the people that we run across, the younger people that are headed in the direction of imitating their guardians, imitating the situation around them, they are actually more equipped and easier to change the perspective because they've already learned how to survive to some degree. And you can see it get sparked in them, And I would just love to see the money, because it's about where the money go, is more spent on that.
Yeah.
So.
Totally.
Anyway, I went on a huge tangent.
Well, no, it's really relevant. What is the root cause of these situations? It's relevant to where the money's going. And it makes sense. If you catch these people before they're incarcerated, before they're doing drugs, before the mental illnesses or mental disorders are taking that stronghold, it can have such a bigger impact on those kids and people.
I'd love to see where they take some of these things that they've spent money on. We were at one homeless facility where they spent
14 million.
14 million. They spent 14 million for a 10-room facility. And these rooms, I went there with a good friend of mine, and we both been in construction our whole entire life. And we're like, this is the worst built place I've ever seen. They spent over $1 million a door for each room. The cabinets was the worst cabinets I've seen. They were worse than they were pressboard. They were already coming apart and hadn't been lived in. And usually in these shelter systems, that's hard living. A lot of those people abuse the thing. You have to build it more rugged, not less rugged. They already come apart. It had a mini fridge. The room was incredibly narrow. They had bunk beds that you can literally rock. They were brand new. They hadn't even been lived in yet. The stucco was like nothing I'd ever seen before. There was no trim on the baseboards and stuff. Like, it was the most crudest built thing. I could have built it for $40,000, $50,000, not including land, maybe including land.
That's crazy.
We did luxury. We built luxury apartments in Thousand Oaks for $260,000 a door that were 3-bedroom, that had a gym, a conference
huge parking
room,
garage on the bottom.
dog walk, underground parking, bicycle storage,
affordable units,
the where you can deliver the Amazon packages and like all the stuff, luxury.
In a pretty nice area.
Yeah, beautiful cabinets, nice countertops, And
It was how much per unit, you said?
260,
$260,000 per unit to build
including the land,
in Los Angeles County.
elevator. No, it's Ventura County.
Oh, Ventura County.
Thousand Oaks. Thousand Oaks. I'm pretty sure
It's
Ventura.
like on the cusp.
Thousand Oaks has a split zone, split between LA and Ventura. But in any case, and this was recently. We're talking like 2021.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's impressive. I'm so glad you brought that up. There's this apartment complex coming up in Santa Monica that got approved unanimously, 6-0 vote, and it is going to cost $1 million per unit, and it's a $123 million build for 120 units. I mean, that's just outrageous. It's going to be 100% affordable housing. And it's going to have different types of units, some 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, how much would it cost to build that?
One of my real estate partners, who is just a dear friend that does such a good job, so ethical. Anyway, he partnered with another organization that specializes in low income and stuff like that. They make so much money, so much money. And so,
like more than
you
just
do
doing
on
regular
private
apartments?
sector, regular. Yeah. Yep. There's so much.
Well, why are these apartments that are affordable costing so much more than, or even like these apartments? Why are these apartments that are either affordable or completely free? Why are they so much more expensive to build than the apartments like you guys built?
Again, like the simple answer to me, it's not based on outcome. It's based on the building the product and going through the process. And there's so many hands in the cookie jar along the way that are all getting rewarded for the bureaucracy. We saw that with the $14 million one. They couldn't get their certificate of occupancy, and it dragged on for so long. And I was talking to them, and I'm like, you have so much influence. This thing is done. There's no reason why you couldn't get your certificate. Use your influence with the county and city. You shouldn't have to, but you have so much influence. Why isn't this getting done? And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then I left thinking, you know what it is that they still have consultants on the job taking a cut. It's more advantageous for them to not be done. It was absolutely ridiculous. And that's a whole different version of fraud where it's not illegal. That's not illegal. It's unethical as heck. But on the private sector, we'd be screaming, I got to refinance this loan. I got to get this thing done. We were building this apartment building and COVID hit and we're like, we got to get this thing done. You came with a friend from church, did a punch list for the 40 units and had that thing all detailed out for the plumber, the drywaller, the cabinets. And you had done this amazing report so that each trade could come in and get their jobs done. And then Nathan was probably, 11, and I said, hey, all the locks are failing. You need to take these screws out, put Loctite them. So for 40 doors, my 11-year-old son redid the doorknobs.
Was 11 at the time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Think about maybe 12. But in any case, Nicole did all the marketing. I'm like, Nicole, take a picture of the front of this building, get these trifold things out, go across the street, get PF Chang's and all these other ones to give us some coupons or whatever for like a welcoming thing for our new tenants and whatever. So Nicole's, 16, 17, doing the marketing. Mom did all the sales.
Yep.
It was crazy. But that's how the outcome was we need to get these things leased at the lowest potential cost and now. And so, that classic example was that shelter that we saw being built was initially budgeted for less than $10 million. They said, oh, we're going to come in at 11.4. That's when we toured it. It was supposed to finish at 11.4 in 3 months' time, or 3 or 4
like 5 months, 6 months.
Say 5 months' time. It went from 11.4. It was done, and they said we finished at 11.4. It turned to 14 million. Yeah, so in that time, they skimmed another $3 million off the top of it. Yeah.
It's crazy. And the Santa Monica one, it's similar. It's going to be $1 million per unit. And that's not including the land, which I don't know why it needs to be a couple blocks from the beach, but that's where they're putting it. It's 3 blocks from the beach. and it's not including the value of the land. So like this is going to be like millions of dollars. Whereas
It's positive reinforcement for negative behavior. If the system was designed to say, hey, we want 100 families per year or 20 families per year in the city of Santa Monica to be enabled and empowered and actually get out of homelessness, and we will retroactively give you X amount of millions of dollars if you can do that, then you're going to walk with people. If you have to build housing or whatever, you'll economize the money to get the outcome, but it's not designed that way.
Yeah.
It's designed the opposite way. It's like a dump truck getting paid per hour versus the belly dump getting paid per load. And I'm not saying it's ethical to drive through red lights, but they were like, I need to get one more load in, So,
yeah, that sounds kind of dangerous, but
yeah, but
that mentality of like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this job done. Like it's lacking in a lot of places. Well, this has been where the money went for that $24 billion in California and our evaluation of it. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.